Hey, this is Professor Homa. Welcome to part 4 of our EX12, the Dr. Weike redesign, and it's actually our 5th video. The first one was an overview, so this is the 4th one, and this one is actually just going to cover the responsive design that we're going to be working on. And some of this is done for you. I started some of the media queries for you, so you just have to put in some of the values, and I just want to go over getting started with some of this. There's no jQuery involved here. We're just going to hide some things and show some things just with the CSS, and I just want to go over it just so you're familiar with it. And right now we only have a home page done, so we're going to make some other pages after this, but the first thing we're going to do is remember this page started with a 960 width, and then what happened, and it's centered within the window, and then once it gets to 960 it's still centered and it starts to get cut off a little bit, and I put in a media query so when it gets to around 870 and starts to break, the percentage kind of changes so that this is 30% and this one, well, basically the body becomes 100%, so it stops getting cut off. So the body had kind of a static size of 960. When it gets to 870, then the body is going to be 100%. So the body's going to fill the window no matter what it is. And this is 30%, this is 58%. And the reason I did that, I just wanted this side nav to be a little wider. I didn't want it as narrow. And if you go to your CSS and you see this, here's the media query for 870, and you can see some of the changes that happened so far. And I'll move this out here so it looks like the other ones. But the body width got changed to 100%. That changed from the 960 pixels that it was. So it's going to fill whatever the window is. Margin I took away, which is 0, and I took away the auto, and I took away the box shadow because we can't see it if it's 100%. And then moving down here, display inline, we'll talk about this a little bit later. This has to do with the navigation. But one of the things I want to deal with over here is, remember we had the nav side, I changed it to 30%. Now, all right, if I wanted to go back and change this to 20, I can. I only made it so it was a little wider, so I'll go back and put it what it was, and I'll save it just to show you why I did this. And why I did it was so that when it gets to a certain point, that this doesn't get so narrow, because you can see what happens here. This navigation gets very narrow. Everything breaks on the 2 lines, and I didn't think it was necessary to have this so narrow. I thought it'd be okay to just kind of share a little bit, so I made this a little bit bigger. I made this 30%, and I made the other one 58. It's still mainly the article part is still the wider part, but I just didn't want the nav so narrow to be just 20%, so I increased that. So if I save that and I go here and I refresh that, you can see it's a little bit wider now. So that's why I did that, so these wouldn't be break. They're eventually going to break, but then when they get too far, once we get to 480, and I do have a media query there at 480, and you can see what's going to happen at 480, and you might say, well, it looks like it's already done. Well, it's not done. There's a couple things that happen here. One, because everything is 100% right now, some of these things I put in some values in here, so they're bumping down here. So I'm going to go over what happened there, but you can see there's some things showing here that we don't want to show, or this is going to show, but then we want to go up here and we actually want to hide this. So there's some things we're going to have to change on this as we work on it. So again, looking at the media query here, you know, everything's okay now. The width is 58. We're not changing the floats yet. So most of the media queries for 870 is pretty much done. Now, one of the things you'll see here, if you look at this, display inline is here, and this doesn't even need to really be here because it kind of repeats what it said initially. But the line height, notice there's a line height change here, and the reason that is, if I take this out, or what I'll do right now, I'll actually just kind of cut this and comment the whole line. I'll comment this whole line right now, just so you see what happens, and I'll save it. Now, if I refresh this, you see what happens right now. This kind of overlaps a little bit. These lines kind of overlap. You don't notice it much, but when they become 2 lines, at some point they overlap. These hovers overlap. So what we do is we increase the line spacing to account for that a little bit. So I ended up going in here and I'll put this back. I'll put the beginning comment here, and what I did is I increased this, and there is a mathematical method. I don't remember what it is right now, but sometimes I just test it and I try 150 first and see how that looks, and then I refresh it. There is a method to this to figure it out exactly, and when I remember it, I'll tell you. But because it still does overlap a little, you can see that the hovers do overlap a little, but it's not quite as tight as it was, and I might even make it like 170. For this, I think I had 150 originally for the line, so that kind of breaks it out. Now there is a little gap there, but that's okay. You know, we're only talking about this kind of 870 when it gets to here, and we kind of have it spread out. So you know, it's still easy to use as navigation, and that's kind of broken down there. So, you know, it's only to that point. When it gets to the smaller point, we're gonna do something a little different anyway. Also, some other things that change at 870, you could see under header banner, the height stays at 240, but the overflow gets hidden. What that means is anything that overflows is hidden. So I'm not resizing that at all. So that's why we're just kind of covering up that banner header. It's getting covered up. We're not trying, and you're not going to see it over here. So whatever is outside of that is just going to get kind of cropped. So that's what we want, because I just want this logo to show. So that's okay. So I wasn't worried about scaling down the header or anything like that. So that's what happens at 870. So I think that's most of the 870. You know, we mentioned the width. We mentioned the width of nav. I just changed them a little bit. And remember, with media queries, when you use one that was already there, that overrides the one that was before it. If you don't put anything, it goes back to its default. Also, so that's pretty much it with the 870. So we're going to focus now on the 480, or I guess this says 520. I guess we went down to 520, although my media query still says, so I should change that and make that 520. I think I went a little bit bigger on that, so 520 is fine. So what happens here at 520, if you look at this so far, here's getting down to 520. We're going to hide this up here because I don't like the way that breaks and these vertical slashes look funny. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're just going to hide it. And that's going to be fairly easy to do. Also, as we scroll down here, we're going to make this be 100% wide. So this kind of fills up this area here, so we don't have this gap anymore. And we're going to remove the floats, even though in some cases we may not have to remove the floats. And we're also going to you know, hide this, and then we're going to show this. And you can see it's showing already. So that's what's kind of happening on this one. The header address top, we're going to put display, and it says hide. So under display, we're just going to put display none. So I'm just going to put none right now, and I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go in here and just refresh this and go up there, and you can see it's hiding it. So it's a real nice way to hide things. So when it gets to 520, it's going to hide that. When you come back, it shows. When you go over 520, when you come down, it's going to disappear. And then what we are going to do is we're going to show this bottom one. We're just going to move the address to the bottom. And that's all we did down here. Footer address bottom. Originally, it was displayed as none. Here's the footer address bottom. It was displayed none. So we're actually going to make sure now we're going to say display block. And that's going to make it display padding. We'll put a little padding around it. Background color. We'll put some background color. Now it's actually using the background colors that are actually up here. So it's actually using the padding and using this stuff up here. So it's some of this is kind of done for you. So you could even copy this. So if you wanted to copy the padding that's here that you did already, you know, you could copy this from there and put that down here. That's the padding that's in there. You could put any padding that you want in there. Background color is going to be the same. It's also the same as the address top. So if you find address top, wherever you find address top, or I guess it's not nav top, it's address top. So wherever the background color is for that, that's that lime color. You can copy that if you want, and you could take that down there and you could put that under your background color for address bottom, even though it's defaulting. And the color is white, so it's already using that. So it's already using these things. So you may not have to do that, but you can copy this and put it in here if it's not there. Normally you don't have to, if they're already done somewhere, you don't have to override them. So you don't really need these. You only have to put anything that changes. Now text align, I do want it to change because we had it was just kind of, I think, to the, I don't know if I had anything in here for, I had no text align for footer address bottom. So now I'm going to put one in, text align. I'm just going to make it center. So that'll make it center on the page. And when I go down here, see, now it's actually going to center on the page. I got to check my colors here because this one looks different. So I want to make sure that they're consistent down here at the bottom also with the copyright. So I'm going to copy this one from footer address bottom and paste it in here. And for text align, I'm also going to want to center it, so I'll just put center in here. And I'll come back to here. So let me refresh that. So the colors they look consistent now with these colors that are down here. Okay, so a couple things. Also, I want to change this. I want to change my nav. There's nav side. Now, you can remove the float. You might say, well, why is it working if you didn't remove the float? Because we actually changed the width to 100%, so it would be bumping down anyway. we didn't change this width, but because we made article homepage 100%, it actually bumped it down. Like if I would take this out, just to give you an idea here, I'm gonna just comment this out quick, and because I had the width 100% in there, let me just save this and put it in and see what happens here. You can see what happens right now. It's still floating, but when this article becomes 100%, it actually pushes this down. So that's actually what happened. That's why it actually looked like it was working. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we go back and make this width 100%. So I'll put that back, and I'll put my comment back in here. So that pushes it down anyway, but it's still probably good practice. It's still probably better to remove the float here, and I'll remove the float here. That's because we don't want it floated, so let's just make sure it doesn't float. And also the width here, it would be 100%, and let me just put 100% because that's what you think it would be. So I'll put that in there, and I'll save it, and I'll take a look at it, and I'll refresh it, and it's at this 520 point. We don't see the address top. This looks okay for what we see right now. We didn't change any of these. These were all based on percentages, so they look okay. And this looks okay. This area goes to 100%. And what's happening here is this is getting bumped off a little bit. These at the bottom are 100%, so I didn't want any margin on either side. And also, they're not inside that section. Remember, the section has that 2% margin on, but this is pushing out of the 2% section. It's pushing past that, pushing over a little bit. So you can see it's not lining up with the other ones. And the reason is because this can't be 100%. Nav side, because we need to actually subtract. We had internal padding in here, if you remember. We had 2% internal padding. What I mean by internal padding is we have 2% in here. So that adds to the width. So if we say it's 100%, it's still going to add 2% and 2%. So it's going to make it 104%. That's why it doesn't fit. So I want to make sure I subtract 4% and just make it 96. That should make it fit like the other one. So I'm going to make that now 90%, 96%. And now when I do that, it should make it line up. So I'm removing that extra padding that's in the inside from the width. And I'll keep these other ones kind of lined up. Now if you wanted to make them smaller, you could do that. If you wanted to go down here and take footer address bottom and you just wanted to make a width, you could make a width like 96% if you wanted to. If you wanted to do width, I'm just going to put 96%. If you wanted to line up with the other ones, we'll see how that looks. I'll put a semicolon here and we'll just see how that looks. So if we wanted something, okay, I changed the width to 96% and nothing happened here to this at the bottom. So we have to ask ourselves why. Now, first of all, remember there's going to be 4%, 4%. We're trying to cut off there. Now also, there's an internal padding of 2% on each side. I have to look at that. So I would actually have to take away an extra 4%. Because it has 2% inner padding just like the nav side. So if I make this 2%, we should be better. So let me save that. And if I do that, and the problem is it's not centering that block in between. It's a block element and it just naturally goes to the left. And remember, block elements don't naturally center. The text inside centers, but there's no natural, block center. You remember to center a body, we had to do margin auto. And actually, I'll just undo what I did here. I'll put it back, and that's what you actually had to do. I had to put in margin auto to actually even off that on either side to make it center within the container that it's in, which is body. So without that, it's just going to move over to the left side. So by putting margin auto, it puts even, and that can actually make it centered. So if I did want it with the the white kind of on the same side like that, I could do that, and I would have to do that to footer copyright. I would have to do the same thing. So for footer copyright, if I wanted to put width, I could put 96%. Now again, that's having it line up with the section where they have 2% on each side, adding up to 4%. Now, is there a padding inside this? I don't remember if there is. It looks like there's a little padding on the top. I'd have to look up and see where there's padding 0.5% and 2%. So even though I'm not seeing it, it's still using that. So I would have the same situation, and it has margin top 12. So it does have a margin top on it. So actually, I'm going to copy this so I know that it has that margin top, because that's going to affect me if I put a margin down here. So let me put a semicolon and paste margin top. because what I might want to do here, I'm going to have to put this to 92 because it also had a 2%. But since this has margin top and then I'm going to do margin auto, I can actually put, the way this should work is I'm actually going to just put margin. And remember, it goes treble, so it goes top is 12. Actually, right is going to be auto. And then bottom is going to be 0, and then right is going to be auto. We'll see if that works. We're putting auto in there twice, but we're doing all four. We're doing top, right, bottom, left. So we're doing auto on the right and left, and that should work. We have 2 semis here, so let me get rid of that. So let's see if this works. Putting auto is okay there. And that seems to work. So that's, remember, you have to use auto to center a block element, so that kind of centers it in that block down here. If you'd want to have the same white going around on either side, I actually kind of like that. So that's another thing you could try there. So again, it's just we just use this MediaQuery to kind of hide one part. We hide the address, we show the bottom, and then we just kind of adjust some things with 100%. And the only thing you have to remember to do is subtract any additional padding. We had to do that for the nav side. We couldn't make it 100. We had to subtract the extra, and it's still in. It's already in that section, so that only needed to subtract 4. The other ones we subtracted 4, and then they had to subtract their own 4. That's how we got them both down to 92 so that they show the white, and we had to use margin auto to actually center them in that area. So that's pretty much the media queries for this. I had some of that done for you because I know it's, to do that on your own, it takes a little practice to work with, but that way, you know, you at least get to get in and kind of look at and work with some of these queries a little bit to make sure that they work. And some of this you could, you know, I advise you to experiment with it and just see what happens. If you want more space in here, you know, between these, I might want a little more space, you know, either above this one. I might want to have the same that I have here. I think I have 1M or something like that. So you might want to spread them out the same way, or you might want to tighten this space so it's same as the others. So you have some flexibility here. Now, that's just the media queries, and this is just the home page. So the next part we're going to do, we're not going to do all these pages, but what the next part we're going to have to do is we're going to do a meet the team page. And we're just going to copy this page first, and then we're going to do a testimonials page, an hours and location, and a contact. So we got 4 more pages to do here. Now we have most of the work done, but we do have some altering to some of these pages. Some of it's going to be copy and paste and just saving over the original. Others we're going to have to copy some styles, and instead of an article homepage, we're going to have an article meet the team or article testimonials, depending on the different kind of styles that are on the page. Because, you know, this is the article styles we have are right here. And if I look at this, I have, you know, top navigation, that's going to stay the same, but article content, that's why I called this article homepage, because the H1, the H2, the paragraph, these might change a little bit depending on what kind of content we have on the page. Because if you remember, you know, when we go here, you know, testimonials has these things. They're almost like block quotes that are on the page. So we may have to do something like that. Meet the team. This has something different too. It has pictures on it. The paragraphs will probably stay the same, but we may change the headings a little bit for this. And we actually might make some links that actually jump down the page, so we don't have to scroll all the way down the page to see all these people. And you know, and we're not going to use the full page, so we'll still have our sidebar onto the side there. Okay, and then also the other pages we're going to do, other than those two, are hours and location, which we're just going to do a little bit. We'll put in this Google map. It's pretty easy to do. That won't be a big deal. And then contact us. We'll see if we can get a form in here, copy one of our forms that we already did, and put that in here. So that's what we're going to be doing next. So I'm going to stop here, and then I'm probably going to make another an EX12 part 2 kind of series, so that, you know, this one will end with these 5 videos, and then we'll move on to the final part of this.